Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Hello and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Crystal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matters. Hello, on this week's episode of Voices Unhindered, I have two grandparents raising their grandchildren. Ferne Caldwell and Anna Clare join me, who both were stuck at the crossroads of having Oranga Tamariki take their grandchildren or raise them themselves. Listen and hear their inspirational stories of determination, advocacy and sacrifice for their grandchildren. Hello, Anna and Ferne. It's so great to have you guys here, having grandparents that raise their grandchildren. So Ferne, starting with you, could you please share with me a bit about yourself and how you came to care for and raise 8 of your grandchildren?
I've got 14 grandchildren in total. I'm in my late 60s and the oldest of my 8 kids is 19, and then we go down to 16, 15, 14, 12, 6, 5 and 2. Yeah, that's what I've got at the moment.
Whoa, could you just tell me how do you do it?
Yeah, I just keep on going. I have to do it, and I sat down one day and decided I was either going to look after the kids and do it properly, or I was not going to do it properly, and I decided I wanted to do it properly for them. So that's it. That's my life. I don't do anything else. I just look after the kids because, quite frankly, I've got no time for anything else whatsoever.
Whoa. Do you mind me asking a bit about your background, like how you came into care of the very first child in the first place?
They're all my daughter's children. The first child, she came into my care because my daughter then was too young, hadn't had a teenage life, and was just too young in herself to look after her. She asked me to look after her a few nights a week, then it got to be a whole week, then it just got to the point where she said, would you have her and I'll just come and see her. So my husband and I went through the courts with her blessing, and that's how we got her. The next 4, my daughter and a new partner had 7 children. They weren't in a good place at all. My daughter's partner, not that I knew at the time, but he got into meth. She tried to stop him for quite a while. When she couldn't, she joined him, and it got to the point where I realised that the kids couldn't stay there any longer, so I went and got them. I picked them up, told her that I was going to take them, and left. And then I rang OT and said, what do I do now, because the kids can't stay there. And that was at 10 o'clock in the morning, and she gave me to 10:30 to decide if I was going to take all of them, or they would take them and split them up and put them into foster care. So I talked over this with my husband, and we decided that yes, we definitely take them. We're not going to give them to strangers or let them go to strangers. So we took them. And then the next 4, next 3, my daughter and her new partner, she was still on meth. He was on meth. They tried to take themselves off the meth.
Do you mind me asking, so her second partner was a meth addict, then the next partner she met was also a meth addict?
Yes, that's correct, yep. Yeah. They did meth for a while, then took themselves off it, give them credit, which they did, and then they started to have a family, but they had an exceedingly violent, both physically and mentally abusive relationship. And in the end, the courts awarded me custody of the 2 older children at the time. I think one was 18 months, the other was 4 months. I've now got care of their 2-year-old brother, who I've had since he was about 2 weeks old. But yeah, that's my kids.
That's amazing. And Do you mind me asking, how long was your husband like helping you with caring for the children, and what was it like after he passed, and how did that change anything for you?
He didn't really help because he was medically unwell anyway, and I looked after him. So it was just me, and the children were not nice children. They'd been running wild. They just didn't do anything right. So I did come down on them quite hard. I wanted to teach them rules and manners and how to treat other people. And
do you think that's to do with some of the trauma they saw when they were young?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
How many years were some of them witnessing like trauma?
Well, the
and
oldest
violence?
one was 8 at the time that I got them, and he saw way too much. Yeah. They all have had counselling of some sort, and 2 of them are now in permanent counselling. They just go every week. Mm-hmm. One of the others is mildly intellectually disabled, and he also finds it quite hard to accept and deal with things that have happened in the past. But as you asked before, my husband died after we had the children for about 4 months, so it's must be me and them since.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. Wow. How would you describe your relationship with all your grandchildren? Like, do you give them all time, equal amounts of your time, or do you just like have a closer relationship with some of them, or how do you manage time?
I find it very hard to be able to split my time between them all.
Yeah, of course.
They all want it, but they all can't get it. And if I go to the supermarket, I'll pick one and take them with me, and it's just our time, something like that. It's not a lot. I try and do things with the younger kids at the weekend, so we go out somewhere. The older ones, we used to do that, but of course they don't want to go to Margaret Mayhew or Chipmunks anymore. So they're quite happy to stay at home on their Xboxes and that, but
you
a good relationship.
Before, like one of them thought they were like your daughter, like you have a mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah, okay. I have a mother-daughter relationship with the older girl who is slightly jealous of the others because they did come into our life after about 6 years of her and I just being by ourselves, even though she's their sibling. But I have a good relationship with them all. They're all totally different children. They all have their own totally different traumas and psychological problems. And one of them, every second word out of her is, "I love you, Grandma," and she gives me a hug every time she walks past me. And that's not got better, that's got worse. And I should have a wee button on my thing. I just push and go, "Yes, I love you too." Otherwise I say it at least 50 times a day. But no, I have a good relationship with them all.
Oh, that's so cool. And what would you say would have been the alternative? Like you said, if you hadn't have taken care of them, they would have likely all ended up in Oranga Tamariki care. Is that correct?
That would be right. And I quite frankly hate to think what sort of children they would be like.
Cool. Have you seen like an improvement in any of their behaviours since they came?
Absolutely, totally. They're considerate. They eat their tea now and not just pick at what they want and push the rest away. Definitely.
So cool. And what do you think's been the main difference that you have made in their lives?
I probably gave them security. Yeah. Gave them heaps of love. Although they were getting love, it was just a different sort of love. Security is probably the main thing because I know they don't like to be away because they feel secure in our house. So, yeah. And also they probably get meals because they used to eat loads of junk. And that probably helps as well, I'd say. The
food, yeah. Are you quite like do you give them all the same thing and like how do you cook for that many people?
How do I cook? Yeah. We've to begin with, they were given a meal and that's it. They had it. I don't care if they told me they didn't like it, you eat it. Mm-hmm. Now we do have, she doesn't have that, so she doesn't get that, but only to a point, because otherwise I'd just be cooking different meals every night. Sometimes I might give someone more carrots because they don't like peas or something like that. But their cooking can be a bit of a hassle. And if I tell them if they don't like it, they can make themselves some noodles or something.
Did you give them like a sense of like boundaries, which kids always look for? Did you give them like that sense of, like you said, they had security, but do you feel like you've put clear boundaries in their lives that's helped guide them?
I think I did, and I think that's what they probably like about it too. Yeah, they pretty well stick to everything I said. My 14-year-old granddaughter, she's just perfect. She's she's your typical girl. She's, slamming the door, whatever, and I hate you kind of girl, but I can deal with that. That's normal, and she's lovely. The rest of them have their problems, and it's individual way I treat them all individually because they're totally different.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question, Anna. Is that okay? So how did you come into care of your grandchildren?
My daughter, like Ferne's, was very young when she had the oldest child, and so we had her a lot. She'd come to stay at our place a lot, weekends and holidays and things like that. My daughter got into some fairly violent relationships when her child was young, and then got into a permanent relationship with the person who became my grandson's father. And at that point, things deteriorated for my granddaughter, and she just decided one day she wasn't going back home, and she wanted to live with me permanently. So that's how she came to be with me. And then about 10 years after that, my grandson came to live with me, but that was a court-placed. So they'd had problems at home, and he was acting out and refusing to go to school. And so Oranga Tamariki got involved, and they asked if I was prepared to keep him.
Mm. And so just going back to your granddaughter, did you say that she had she witnessed like violence and things like that, which made her want to come to live with you? Part of the reason?
Yeah, there'd been a lot of violence in the household, a lot of alcohol-induced violence.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, were her parents both alcoholics? Or
her mother is.
Yeah.
Yeah, her father's not, but he's becomes very violent when he drinks.
Yeah. And what's your relationship like with your granddaughter now?
Oh, we're really close. Yeah, she moved away. She went flashing. She went over to America to meet her birth father, and it's come back and come to live at our house because it's cheaper than living somewhere else. But she's awesome. She's a really good support for me with my grandson.
Oh, so cool. Did you feel like it was a responsibility? Like, did you feel like it was something that you wanted to do, or did you feel like it was not like a burden, but like, something you had to do? Or,
well, when my granddaughter came, it just happened naturally. So she just, stayed longer and longer periods of time and then didn't go home. With my grandson, it was a bit different, and certainly doing everything that I had done with my granddaughter, but 10 years later, I certainly felt the difference emotionally and physically, being much more tired. But, as Ferne said, the alternative was foster care, and that's not an option for us. So,
that's cool.
Obviously he was going to stay in the family.
Yeah.
It's all there was to it, really. No option.
So what do you think are some misconceptions? Like, what do people on the outside, like for both of you, other people have opinions about how you raise your grandchildren, or they shouldn't be doing this, or they shouldn't be caring for all those kids, or like, have you sensed that?
No, I haven't.
That's good.
You don't tend to meet a lot of people or see a lot of people when you've got 8 kids.
Yeah.
People don't come around to visit you, and they do invite you to their place.
So
I don't get anybody's opinion.
Yeah.
I probably have about 3 friends who will say, come out for lunch and, tell me if you want to, pour out your feelings or something. But other than that, no, they don't. They just, the 3 I really
Good
go,
friends.
they back me with how I do it.
That's cool.
Yeah. I think, speaking in terms of the whole group of people in Christchurch in particular, I think the general feeling is that you find out who your friends really are, because people of our age often have disposable income and disposable time, And if you're raising your grandchildren, you don't have either of those things.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
just the going out for lunch or, let's go to a movie or whatever is not possible anymore.
Yeah.
No, you have to organise it.
Yeah, everything's got to be planned in advance. And when my grandson first arrived, he was a lot of school refusal. So, even to say, meet somebody for coffee at 10 o'clock would depend on whether he went to school or not, because he was too young to be left at home. And he may or may not have been at school. So, things would change on the day.
And I used to be an exceedingly punctual person. I always used to be there at least 5 or 10 minutes before I had to be. Now I'm at least 5 or 10 minutes late usually.
You were early today.
I know.
I was impressed.
Yeah, so was I actually. It's just something you have to put up with. You might be rushing out the door and the baby's you got to change his nappy or something, and you're late anyway. But you have to try and explain that to people, and they just kind of look at you sideways. But generally the consensus of that, you raise them, that's fine.
Yeah. It's cool because with my grandparents, I felt there was a bit of a stigma back then. Like for example, at school, people would be like, why are you living with your grandparents? Or why is your grandma so old? Or it was strange. It's strange that people would think like that. And then, because it seemed unusual. And then there were other people that would be like, for example, some relations would be like, oh, your grandparents are too old to have you guys here. And it's like, we both, my grandma, the last thing she said before she passed was we've loved having you. And it was a blessing to both of us. We both were so close and helped each other and things. We were close as friends. It wasn't like I was a burden to her, but other people that were looking in would think oh, she's got to cook for her every night. But it wasn't like that. I'd be at work all day and then I'd come home and get my own food. It was.
Yeah.
But people have all these opinions that they just kind of and it's no, you don't understand. So, because they probably never had that relationship with their grandparents. So I feel
I think that's the blessing of the relationship you develop with the child. But it's also a curse in the sense that for grandparents, it's the time when you're supposed to be just playing with the children and
giving them
no responsibilities.
Yeah,
it's role
and then send them home.
Really.
But if you're being the parent, if you're being the parent, you lose that grandparent relationship, so it's different.
Yes. So
how do you spoil them?
Yeah.
Like you should do.
Yeah.
I have to. If I take them out, they'll get an ice cream, but it's not like the grandparents would do all the nice things with them
and
and
then
then
sleep over
send them
at grandma's and they stay up all night.
That leads me to ask you a question. How have you navigated that area of being a parent figure, but also being their grandparent? How has that?
Yeah, when it comes to the point, I actually point out to them that I am their grandmother and I'm not their mother and I'm not as young as I should be or could be. So they've got to take extra special care of me and be nice and help me. But other than that, they're my kids and I'm their mum and I look after them.
Yeah.
That's basically the way I look at it. I don't do anything different because I'm a grandmother.
Yeah. I think you just become the parent, don't you?
Yeah, it is.
You just become the parent.
Yeah.
Which I know for some people in the group is an issue because they've got grandchildren living with them, but then they've got grandchildren living with your own parents somewhere else with other grandchildren. And sometimes the grandchildren who don't live with you become quite jealous of the ones that live with you because they see them getting things that they're not getting from
preferential
grandma.
treatment.
Yeah. And I know that's an issue for some people, and it's an issue often for the sons and daughters, the mothers and fathers, because you've got all these children, so you can't just babysit whenever you want. Whenever they need you to babysit, that sort of thing. So I think those are the kind of things that you have to sort of work around, and especially if you've got children from one parent who really resents the fact that you've got the children and is very angry because you have her children.
Got that problem, yeah.
My daughter says I had stolen her children from her. So even when things are good, sitting just below the surface is her belief that I stole her children. And so you've got to navigate that relationship as well.
And how do you do that?
With difficulty. It's not easy. And I think, everybody does it differently, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you can maintain a relationship with your children and sometimes you can't.
It puts something between you, the two of you,
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
My son really resents the fact that I've got all his sisters' children and his 2 children. I didn't spend as much time with them as I should have or I could have, or I didn't take them places. But, when you've got all these other kids, it's very hard. I always tried to include them. If we went anywhere for a day, I would take them with us, because I have got a bus. They probably did miss out. But, I've tried to make it up with them, and we have a good relationship, but my son does still resent it.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, my son really resents my daughter. That she's done that to us, in a sense, put her children onto us. And
Yeah, that's it too, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there needs to be a perspective change, thinking more about the kids, what's best for them? Obviously it was best for them to go with you guys. So do you think if they change their perspective, things could be different?
I think they try to.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think on the surface it works because they're normal people and they can see the value of what we're doing. But, there's just that underlying, just that feeling somewhere that,
Or you kind of blame the sibling or whatever, it's your fault.
Yeah, or,
Yes. In my
angry.
case, it is blame.
Yeah. And they're angry about what they've done. Yeah.
Rather than feeling empathy for them, obviously your daughter had a meth problem and that's something that deserves empathy. So is there any of that from your son or
He's he won't talk to her anymore now. And the several members of our family, wider family, who won't talk to her either. But I actually look at the fact that if I can forgive her for what she did at the time and all the horrible things she did do, because she did do some very horrible things, and the way she treated me, they all resent that. But if I can forgive her, I really can't see why they can't, because they didn't do it to her, to them. They did it to me, not them. And I've certainly forgiven my daughter. The meth affected her, and she's still not the same person. But I'm lucky I've got her back to what she is, and I love her dearly, and I love her friendship too. We're very good friends.
And do you mind? Do you want to add anything, Anna?
No, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
That, they were in that situation because of a substance that was affecting their heads. And
do you mind me asking, what was your daughter addicted to meth as well? Or?
No, she's uses alcohol.
Yeah,
that's her drug of choice.
Can be just as damaging.
Yeah.
If you just happen to be tuning in, you're listening to Voices Unhindered with Crystal Jenkinson. On today's episode, I chat with 2 grandparents raising their grandchildren, Ferne Caldwell and Anna Clare, who both came to the point of Oranga Tamariki taking care of their grandchildren, choosing to raise them themselves. Listen to their inspirational stories of determination, advocacy and sacrifice for their grandchildren. How did you imagine your life when your own children were little? How did you see younger? How did you see not that you think about your retirement years when you're 30 or 40, but what did you imagine your retirement years to be like?
Lazing on a beach. A drink in hand and a book in the other. And that's still a dream. Don't think it ever will work out somehow. I didn't envisage this at all, because basically I get up at 6:30 in the morning and I finish about 10:30 at night, and I never do anything else but do things all day. I don't sit down. The only time I sit down is when I'm driving them somewhere or picking them up, or people think, what does she do all day? Quite frankly, I don't know. I just work. I start at one end of the house, work my way around it, then start all over again, because the baby in the meantime's packed it all up again. I do 4 to 5 loads of washing a day usually.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a Chinese laundromat during the winter, because I can't put everything in a dryer. It's just horrendous. But no, that's not what I envisage at this age of my life.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Well, the same, except, I think I would have travelled a lot more. Fortunately, my granddaughter and I went to China before my grandson arrived properly, so that was quite good. But, I didn't envisage that I would still be, running around and doing school meetings and taking the child to counselling and things when I was in my 70s. It wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
And also doing birthday parties.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And school lunches.
And swimming lessons. And, Yeah,
you don't plan to be doing school lunches every day in the 60s and 70s.
I hate school lunches. The only good thing about school holidays is the fact that you don't have school lunches, and I don't have to get up at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's whoever wakes up first wakes me up. So, that's the only good thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I just, being a mother on my own, I just never realised, the sacrifice that my grandma made until I guess she was gone. And then I thought, oh my gosh, my grandma did so much for me, basically, obviously she looked after my granddad and he wasn't always well as well, but she looked after me, she'd, just do what every mother would do and then go the extra mile as well. And I was I thought it was just normal at the time, but then I was like, no, she must have had a second wind in her last years or something, because,
Yeah, that would probably be a good way of putting it, a second one.
Yeah,
working your way down and all of a sudden you're working way back up again.
And how do you guys find your second wind?
Sometimes it's very, very hard to find that second one. Sometimes I'm absolutely exhausted. I really am. Just sometimes it's very, very hard to keep yourself going. But I do. Yeah. Who else is going to do it if I don't?
Yeah.
And there's no one else. And the fact that if I'm not here, what's going to happen to all the kids is quite frightening, how it would affect them. And I just don't want that to happen. So I have to try and look after myself, but that really is at the bottom of the pile because I look after them.
Yeah. And how do you look after yourself as well? Do you ever have time just to sit, not sit still, but quiet, be a little bit quiet? In the mornings, do you get 10 minutes where they're not awake or something?
I always take an extra minute in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
1 minute in the shower, and I think, right, this is it, here's my minute, and that's it. And no, I never sit down. I don't sit down and relax. I never watch TV now. There's no point me starting a program and watching a series because I'll never see the end of it. I just don't have time to myself. Maybe at 2:00 in the morning I could, but no.
Greatest time, yeah.
Do you?
What about you, Anna?
Well, I'm at the other end of that now because my grandson is 18, so come past that now, which is really good. And when he first came to me, he was 10, so once we got the school thing sorted and he was going to school more regularly, there was time. And there was only really ever one at a time. So I certainly wasn't running around as much as Ferne's, not by any stretch of the imagination, thank goodness.
And how do you look after yourself? Because are your kids still in your care, Anna?
Yeah, they both still live with me.
And have you had any challenging teenage years I know my grandparents did with me?
Yeah, both of my grandchildren have various mental health issues and have been under child and adolescent family services. And the hospital my granddaughter was in and out of the adolescent psych unit when she was 15 and 16. Both of them have had have had times when they've been suicidal and have needed to be watched very closely. And lots of appointments around that and running backwards and forwards and things. And both suffer from anxiety.
Have you ever felt it's nothing to do with you, but have you ever felt any guilt around that, helpless, oh, what can I do? I've done everything.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Frustrated.
Yeah, all the time. That's just part of the deal.
And you wish that, I think, how can I help them more than what I'm helping them?
Yeah.
What could I do differently to make them better? Because all my kids, all of them, are very, very anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apart from other things, but
Yeah.
anxiety comes into it all the time to the point where one of them doesn't go to school some days because he's so anxious about it.
I was just like that when I was at high school. And my grandma, like, I bunked school. I dropped out twice because of, like, abusive relationships and things like that. But my grandma had no idea what to do. Like, she was, like, a Christian, so she prayed and things like that. But, like, I was, like, in depression, anxiety. I was using, marijuana, and that just made it worse. So I can relate to all the things you're talking about and how she felt. How, like, I felt bad for making her feel so bad, as in, like, helpless. And I'm like,
but you do now, but you probably didn't then.
No, I was... I didn't realize how it affected her then at the time. But I know she cared about me more than she cared about herself, which is probably, you guys can relate.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, as Ferne said, I mean, the biggest concern when the children are young is to making sure you stay alive long enough to look after them. So you care for yourself as much as you have to for that.
Yes.
Because that is a fear, what will happen if I suddenly drop dead. I'm in my 70s. I've got friends who've died at this age. It wouldn't be unusual to die in your 70s. And if you add in the extra stress and things that, Ferne is carrying,
How was it looking after your husband when he wasn't that well, Ferne? Was that like an extra stress for you, or was it when he went, like, I don't want to sound bad, but, like, was it a bit of a, like...
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I didn't have to look after him, no, but I missed him terribly.
Yeah.
And he's also the one that used to say, hey, pull your head in. You can vent to me and then go away and do it properly or something like that. Very nicely, he said nicely. I do actually miss that because sometimes I think, maybe I shouldn't have done that or said that, and he would have put me in line. But anyway, after that I did find it rather challenging with all the children because they were still not the nicest of children. And it probably took us, I actually have to say, at least a couple of years before I could say that the children were nice kids. And I was quite happy that people met them. Now I've forgotten what the question was.
Did you feel some relief when he actually died and you didn't have to care for him anymore?
Yeah, that was it.
But you missed him.
And then the kids and their problems just took over anyway. So I know I didn't grieve properly for him because I didn't have time. Basically, it came down to that.
Did the kids grieve, like, with you as well, kind of?
Not really. Well, they didn't. As far as children can, that don't really understand that sort of thing. They knew he wasn't there, and they all had really nice memories of him. But and they actually still talk about him, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But no, it probably did, in a way, help me that he wasn't there because he only would have got a lot worse. And I just, quite frankly, don't know how I would have done it. Yeah. I remember the last night he was alive, not that I knew that was happening. I was crawling up the stairs thinking, I don't know how I'm going to keep going. And maybe you heard me, I don't know. Well, I was only thinking it. But, and I found him the next morning. So, it was a relief in a way that he wasn't there to care for, but I did miss him hugely. Yeah. Hope that sounds right.
It does. It definitely does.
Having another adult in the house makes
Well, that's what I miss too. You're just having someone there to talk to.
Yeah.
Because usually when I do meet adults, I tend to never shut up because I'm so not used to talking to adults anymore.
Yeah, I get it. It can be quite, especially with that many kids, I can't imagine you talking to many adults.
No, I don't. They don't come and sit down and talk to me, and even if they are there, they don't get a word in edgeways anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, one of the big problems is just making plans. I mean, I know Ferne makes plans to come to the grandparents group on a regular basis and makes it occasionally. Because something crops up, and if something comes up at school, suddenly a child needs to be picked up from school or, can't go to school because of anxiety or,
Yeah,
some therapist meeting.
Don't go any. I never really greatly plan things because 9 times out of 10.
I see.
And I also used to drive the kids mad, but I always used to plan to take them somewhere at the weekends, but I'd never tell them in case it fell through.
Yeah.
Because something had happened, so they always used to think I was just being silly and nice, just having them on. But it was really just so I didn't let them down if we didn't go to what I'd told them they were going to.
Yeah.
And are you quite, open with your grandchildren? Like, you tell them, how do you talk to them about your relationship with their mother and things that she's gone through? How do you,
Oh, no, I'm very open.
Yeah.
We talk about it. Myself and my 16-year-old grandson, we have an extremely open relationship, and he tells me everything, and I mean everything that happens to him.
Oh, that's nice.
Sometimes I don't really want to hear it, but anyway, I never say no.
Yeah.
But, and we do, and he's not averse to telling me he loves me in front of his friends and giving me a cuddle and a kiss, and he does that every day, and I'm really lucky. But, yeah, he's... the others are not quite the same.
Yeah. It's so strange because when I was younger, I don't know why I felt embarrassed that I lived with my grandparents.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. How was it embarrassing? It's you're blessed to have grandparents that care about you. But I looked at it.
You're not old enough to appreciate it or realise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying.
I can't believe myself that I was like that. But
my daughter used to go to a school in town, or the 19-year-old, and I remember there was a friend of hers. Every time I went to pick her up, the friend would just stare at me, and you could see what she was thinking. Gosh, she's old. Look
what
at her. Every time.
Did she tell you that you were her grandma? Or
Yeah, they all knew who I was. They all knew, but she just stared at me, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm old.
You don't look old. Did you want to say anything, Anna?
No, I think it's becoming more normal now for children to live with your grandparents. It's not the unusual situation it was probably even when you were little.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of my grandchildren have had any problems in terms of, people querying that particularly. It just was what it was. I mean, my grandson had a friend who also lived with his grandmother. And in their friend group, it was just, what you did really didn't seem to matter. My granddaughter's friends, I've got a whole bunch of her friends that I'm friends with on Facebook and things, and they all call me Nana or Grandma.
Yeah, well, I'm Grandma to all the kids' friends. They just call me Grandma.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's kind of becomes normal. You just develop this extra grandchildren that don't belong to you.
It's so funny. How have you guys navigated technology and things like that? Because when my grandparents, they were way, I don't know, but I think they were from, a way older generation because they died, when they were 95 years ago. And they did not have any desire to learn anything about technology. And they were, living back in when they,
My granddaughter is obsessed with AI.
Oh, okay.
So I know more than I want to know about AI.
Okay.
I hear a lot about it. Having an 18-year-old and a 29-year-old living with me, I don't have to worry too much about technology because there's always somebody to bail me out when I make a mess on the computer.
Yeah. That's good.
So that's very helpful. My granddaughter's very impressed that I got a smart TV and managed to set it up all by myself. So that was my claim to fame as far as technology goes.
What about you, Ferne?
I'm useless, totally useless, absolutely. The boys help me. I've got a computer, but I just do the normal humdrum things with it, pay bills and emails, and that's basically it. The kids have got their Xboxes or their PlayStations, and if something goes wrong, well, that's tough. They have to work it out themselves because I don't know what to do. although I must admit that I would like to have known more about knowing the security and the safety around iPads and that sort of thing, and finding it a lot easier to get help in that respect, because I really did need it at some stages there, and it was quite hard to find someone that could relate it to me so I understood it.
Yeah. Did you find someone like in your group? Or?
I found someone, but actually it was pure chance, and it wasn't through any society or anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably true for most grandparents, that whole sort of safety around the use of computers and the impact of social media on our kids. You know, that we just didn't have to face when our own children were growing up. That wasn't an issue. And suddenly it's a huge issue now, and you know, young children have to be protected from, you know, from Twitter and Facebook and all of those kind of places.
One of my children, I've taken her iPad off her. She's not getting it back, and I won't be buying her a phone. And she goes to high school next year, but there's no way she's going to get a phone, and she knows that. So we just have to wait and see what happens. But I just don't want her in that situation ever again, where I can't monitor things that she's doing, saying, seeing. And I don't know what she's doing at night time. I make them give them their phones when they go to bed.
Yes.
But they're allowed them at the weekend, but not during the week. But you just don't know what's there. And what's out there, and who they're talking to, and what they're saying and looking at, and it's really quite worrying.
It's good that you're concerned about it. Like, some parents don't even understand the risks of, you know, all that.
I think we have to be aware of it. You have to be aware. And now the 6-year-old, who is obviously going to be a computer or a gamer or something, the 5-year-old couldn't care less, but the 6-year-old definitely will be. He just already knows how to get onto things. I'm going, what are you watching? And then I have to work out how he's not going to watch it again.
And that's something you're kind of...
I'm conscious of it.
And trying to find a way to deal with putting those boundaries.
That sort of problem,
And is there any of that for you, Anna? Or like not so much at their age?
No, I passed that one out, fortunately. But it's hugely concerning, because it is such a dangerous area. You know, the number of children who are groomed and then, just wander off down the road to meet somebody that they, think is a 13-year-old girl, and turns out to be an adult male.
So I've had that problem, where one of my children went and met a person, and that turned into sexual abuse, and we've had to go through that. So that's also added to the trauma of that child and everything else that they're going through. So, that really bothers me.
It's so true, because you're so vulnerable at that. Even around 18 to 20, you think that you know what you're doing. Like, I was at that age and I was like, I know who I'm talking to. I know what's going on. But, like, actually, when I look back, I'm like, no, I was so easily led into, the wrong places. And because of this trauma I was dealing with, it attracted me to the wrong people. Like, now I'm, like, healing and I'm growing. But, like, growing up, I had a lot of issues I was dealing with. And I was vulnerable online and in person. So that's another, area to be aware of. And also not having enough, not having a great amount of money. Like, my grandparents couldn't, afford a lot of things when I was growing up that other kids had from families, with 2 parents working and things like that. Did you ever struggle with that, like saying, well, I don't have the money, or like
Constantly.
yeah. And they'll say, well, my friends
I can't
have
afford
this.
that.
Yeah.
Or you can't have those to snack on because I've bought those
Yeah.
for lunches and I can't afford to buy them just so you can snack on them. That's a constant one.
Yeah.
It's all right if you've got 2, but, when you've got
Yeah.
8 you want to give food to, you just can't do it. And they have to realise, and they do realise it now. I'll tell them I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And if they want something, we'll plan to buy that next month or something and I'll save up for it.
That's cool.
It's the only way you can do it.
They get older. As they get older, they see the good and the bad.
All my kids are aware of what drugs and alcohol
Yeah. Oh, that's
do
cool.
in
Yeah.
the life. Even the younger ones, probably not the 5 or 6 year old, but the younger ones are the older ones.
Yeah.
They all know what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that they're going to not choose to go along that path.
Yeah. And you've allowed them to make their own decision about both their parents, Like you've never
Absolutely.
influenced-
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we end?
Don't think so.
Okay, it was so interesting talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Join me every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. on Plains FM 96.9. You can find past episodes at plainsfm.org.nz and subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.